Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video will look at the 2023 film, The Marvels. In preparation for this video, I watched my video on Captain Marvel from last year. One of the aspects of that video that stood out to me was the ridiculous amount of content I found hating on Brie Larson. I'm aware of the toxic side of internet fandom, but it is shocking just how repetitive and dehumanizing it truly is. I find it sad that people watch that content on a loop, living empty lives, moving from one outrage to another. What a pathetic existence it must be to fill your free time with the consumption of such shallow and hateful content. Within minutes of beginning research into this video, I was again able to find tons of this content released recently and in conjunction with the release of The Marvels. These YouTubers' pathological obsession with Larson developed due to an inability to cope with the comic book movie star's feminism that has led them to root for the destruction of what they proclaim to love. It reminds me very strongly of fan reaction to the Star Wars prequels. Fans who had grown up with the original trilogy couldn't deal with new movies that were aimed at a new generation of fans. This isn't to say that those films were good, because of course they are worse than the original trilogy in my opinion. They are undoubtedly deeply flawed films. That being said, just say your piece and then move on. Why was there such visceral hatred that turned into directed harassment campaigns? Why would people get so angry that they would harass Ahmed Best for playing Jar Jar Binks? What makes you so angry that you spend valuable moments of your limited time on Earth trying to tear down what you used to love and made such a big part of your identity? Of course, fans being passionate is great, and they can speak out against things that they don't like about their favorite franchises, but for a vocal minority, lines have been crossed long ago. Mark Gatiss, the co-creator of the BBC television series Sherlock, spoke on this extreme tendency amongst a small portion of fan bases.
Something's happened in the last few years whereby people's nostalgia has been sort of weaponized, and there's an incredible sense of entitlement. I was reading an interview with George R.R. Martin the other day about how people have taken possession of Game of Thrones to an extent where he said, I don't understand how they can hate something that they used to love, and the trajectory can turn so rapidly.
This weaponization of nostalgia, as Gatiss calls it, has proven to be a profitable niche for several online commentary channels. This is something I am trying to work actively against with this YouTube channel. Yes, I am a very small YouTuber, but I am trying as best I can to not feed into the cynicism that this machine can encourage and reward. I find these YouTubers to be incredibly lazy, and I hate what that does to erode the online discussion spaces surrounding something I love, film. I did love it when Zack Snyder called out geeks and gamers to their faces.
On our donation page, we still have the Geeks and Gamers logo. I just want to say that I really, we talked about this, and we're really not affiliated with Geeks and Gamers as far as I'm concerned, and I really just want to make that clear. And I also want to just say, in light of recent events, I think we really, if Justice League teaches us anything, it's about coming together, and there's no room for hate. And I just think that it's important. It's an important message, and of course, as the father of Asian children, it really hits close to home for me. And I just really want to put that out there that we all, there's no room for hate.
Brie Larson was the continued target of these losers. This would continue throughout the production of the film, through its release, and now well after. The negative energy generated by this reached such a point that Samuel L. Jackson was asked about it in an interview with Rolling Stone, stating, quote, "She's not going to let any of that stuff destroy her. These incel dudes who hate strong women, or the fact that she's a feminist who has an opinion and expressed it. Everybody wants people to be who they want them to be. She is who she is, and she's genuinely that." End quote. While this was a minority of the online discussion surrounding these films, there were broader signs of a growing apathy towards the MCU in the post-Endgame landscape. Films like Spider-Man No Way Home were able to successfully channel fans' nostalgia to bring them to the theaters, but a growing sense of disinterest started to plague the MCU more broadly. There has been lots of discussion about the possible reasons, which I won't dig into much here, because I don't know exactly why this occurred. It was an undeniable fact, however, and this would be occurring parallel to the death of DC's Cinematic Extended Universe project, leading to widespread speculation surrounding a supposed superhero fatigue. The Marvels was already in production before these signs had emerged, with the film being announced back in 2019, simply being teased as a Captain Marvel sequel before the slow trickle of Disney Plus content eventually morphed the film into something new, a sequel that would be expansive in a sense that has rarely been done before with superhero films. This is not simply a Captain Marvel 2, though that is a part of the film, but instead it serves as the introduction of a whole new team, the Marvels. The idea of having 3 heroes instead of just one would give Disney a retroactive reason for having produced so much MCU content for Disney+. I am not an MCU diehard. I watched a number of the films leading up to Endgame, but not all of them, but I always felt like I had a decent grasp on what was going on with each film. This has been a common criticism pointed out in the post-Endgame MCU. The critique is that now with so many shows in addition to the films, there's just too much homework to stay caught up, and unless you're a diehard fan, you're just not going to care to watch all the shows you need to. However, in my experience with watching these movies, I find that they explain themselves pretty well. I watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness without ever having watched the first film or WandaVision, just because I wanted to see the new Sam Raimi film in theaters, and I feel like I understood the film pretty well. Of course, it probably doesn't have as much emotional impact for me as it would have had I been invested and watched all that came before, but I think the Marvel movies are usually pretty basic and simple in their storytelling structures in a way that makes it easy to follow along. I have watched Captain Marvel, of course, many times and enjoy the film quite a bit, despite some criticisms I have of it. I haven't watched anything else that I was supposed to, however, such as WandaVision or Ms. Marvel, though I had read some Ms. Marvel comics before. However, I found this film to be pretty easy to follow, but maybe the fact that those shows existed made people hesitant to go to the theaters to see the movie as opposed to just waiting to watch them all together on Disney+. The film would be directed by Nia DaCosta, a comic book nerd who found breakout success directing Candyman, the 2021 sequel to the Bernard Rose classic. In that film, she was able to illustrate her visual talents as a filmmaker, as well as showcase her ability to generate profit for the studios. She had several ideas for this film, with one of her central goals to bring a strong sense of viscerality to the action. She wanted to work against the modern trend towards weightless action scenes that are a result of the heavy use of CGI and green screen that these films demand. She also spoke about her desire to make a lighter film despite the film's exploration of trauma. The film's screenplay would be credited to DaCosta, Megan McDonnell, and Elisa Karasik. The budget for the film would reportedly be well over $200 million. This would demand a large box office haul to break even, something that would not materialize. The film was released on November 10th, 2023, and was met with mixed critical reception. It made less than its reported budget worldwide, bringing in a little over $200 million. This would be considered a massive flop for Marvel, with blame quickly directed toward DaCosta from Disney, despite the lagging box office totals for several Disney properties in 2023. The film did become the highest-grossing film directed by a black woman, but this accomplishment was under-discussed due to the widespread conversation surrounding so-called superhero fatigue. With this context laid out, let's discuss my thoughts on the film. Let's explore The Marvels. The film is simply a lot of fun to watch. It maintains a fun, light tone while still dealing with some deeper themes. The film juggles a lot of characters and action confined within a short runtime. This shorter runtime of 105 minutes helps the film not to overstay its welcome. A lot is happening, but the film does a good job of balancing it all out and pushing the narrative forward. DaCosta shows off her impressive visual talent as a filmmaker. While I do think that the film failed at creating action sequences with weight behind them, they're still very fun to watch. The CGI-heavy approach that the MCU demands just makes it too hard to have action scenes that can accomplish that visceral feeling that DaCosta was going for. The editing of the fight scenes adds to the impressive visuals, and mixed with fun soundtrack choices, elevates these scenes beyond the usual big-budget action fare we've come to expect. The switching mechanic adds a unique and fun twist to these scenes. The first major action sequence where this happens is a lot of fun and showcases the film's well-done mixture of action and humor. I usually criticize the MCU's quip-heavy dialogue and how it detracts from the action scenes or any potential moments of real character depth, but I think in this film it's incorporated better. Maybe this is because of the film's overall tone, but I found this to be less off-putting than usual. This could also be tied to the main trio's really fun chemistry and the great performances by all three actresses. Brie Larson does another really good job with her character's growth, being more subdued in this film, but still getting a satisfying conclusion to her mini arc in the film. Tiona Paris does a good job playing her conflicted character, and her moments with Larson work well. Iman Vellani is a superstar in the making. Her bubbly personality is a great match for her character, and she brings great energy to her role. The coming together of this team puts a smile on my face, as their developing chemistry feels more organic than most of the other MCU team-ups I've seen. As I said before, I haven't watched Ms. Marvel, but the dynamic of the Khan family is adorable and matches the energy of this film so well. It brings a new dynamic we rarely see into the superhero fold. This isn't just in the fact that they are a Muslim family, which is cool to see in a mainstream superhero movie, but also just the general idea of a teenage superhero and her supportive parents all playing a role in the narrative, which infuses the movie with a fresh feel that helps it a ton. The whole film feels unique and exciting, despite one key lackluster narrative element, the very weak villain. I don't have anything negative to say about Zalwe Ashton's performance, but her character Dar-Benn is very static. While she has potential, she is not given enough development and suffers from bland and uninspired writing. She is a cookie-cutter villain who fits within the trope of the villain we think is right, who ultimately serves as a pretty dull and uninteresting foil to the Marvel storyline. I do like how they tied in the ending of the previous film, in Danvers' mistakes, into the backstory for Dar-Benn, but I felt that the actual character this was all being infused into was given nothing interesting to do with it. For a second, it seemed like maybe they would go in a different direction than the standard superhero storyline, but ultimately she stayed a villain as opposed to working alongside the heroes towards a resolution. I think this would have been an interesting moment to subvert our expectations and keep with the fresh feel of the rest of the movie, but instead they went with the traditional and less interesting path. Despite this criticism, I enjoy the story. The storytelling does fall into pitfalls like the aforementioned main villain's generic narrative arc, but it makes up for it with sheer chaotic fun. We get this constant sense of elevated joyfulness, with the deeper moments serving as a nice counterweight to the film's utter ridiculousness. The singing planet would be something that if you had explained to me before I saw the film, I probably would have cringed at, but the execution is just too good. The cat scene is my favorite by far, with the hilarious payoff to the mystery of the eggs being truly satisfying. I never would have thought that watching a superhero help a cat swallow a bunch of scientists would be something I would see in a film, let alone that I would enjoy it as much as I did. The film reminds me a lot of James Wan's Aquaman and his commitment to unseriousness. I don't mean this as a negative in any sense, as I adore that film. This willingness to just have fun with admittedly goofy material allows for your whole film to feel fresh. There is a fine line that needs to be walked with this approach, but genuine love and passion mixed with enough emotional weight to undergird your silliness helps to sell it. This is what Marvel's does so well, as it's clear that DaCosta is passionate about the material, and the whole film seems to be infused with radiant, positive energy. This is not a groundbreaking film, narratively or technically, but it maximizes its strengths and commits to a vision that is enjoyable to see realized. Yes, it sometimes plays it safe with MCU cliches, but overall the film transcends those generic trappings to create something overwhelmingly fun. I find the way that Disney laid the film's box office failure at the feet of DaCosta to be very bizarre and stupid. a complete lack of willingness to come to terms with the inevitable highs and lows of the box office and industry at large, instead blaming the director who brought some creative energy to your project for its financial failure. I understand that for a lot of people who have seen this film, it didn't work for them, and that's okay. I don't think it's wrong or bad for you to not like any film, but I hope you watch the film before critiquing it. There has become a bad habit that has continued to develop of people picking sides before they even see a film and poisoning the online discourse before a film has even been given a fair chance. This is something I find immensely disappointing about modern online film discourse. For those of you who have given this film a chance, I would love to chat with you in the comments section below about what you thought of it. Thank you all for watching, and see you next week.